Grammy Award-winning artist Lizzo, in her performance for the 2019 Video Music Award, preaches in the middle of her performance of Good as Hell that I'm tired of the BS. It's so hard to love yourself in a world that doesn't love you back. She then proposes that she will take this opportunity for people to forget about their problems and to enjoy themselves and feel good as hell. While the song is a declaration that it believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself, Lizzo's music ministry has been one that empowers people to own one's identity and celebrate one's life, despite the challenges and counter-narratives that tell you otherwise. I think that it is predictable that I give my first sermon on identity, especially one that celebrates our uniqueness as LGBTQ+ folks. Like many LGBTQ+ people, throughout my life, I have always been told who I was supposed to be. Growing up as a pastor's kid in a Korean immigrant Presbyterian church, I was forced to suppress my sexuality from an early age as my own parents' church and my parents' religion taught me that being gay was a sin, and therefore I did not deserve God's love. Now, as someone who is really gay, have a bachelor's of arts in queer theory, and am at Harvard studying the intersections of divinity and queer theory, it has become my mission to work for and with the LGBTQ+ community and our liberation from heteronormativity, which creates oppression and violence. While I may not have the same confidence, power, or platform as Lizzo, as some days I look in the mirror and don't feel good as hell, I believe that both Lizzo and our Bible reading today reveals that despite what our world tells us, who we are supposed to be, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Biblical commentaries of Psalm 139 states that this Psalms is the greatest Psalms to be written, as it demonstrates the power of our omnipresence and all-knowing God. The purpose of this Psalms is to explore God's relationship to us and how there is no escape from God's presence in our lives. The chapter is filled with many examples of God's knowledge of us, and the statement, "You know me," repeated over and over again. Let's revisit some of these verses. "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain." When continuing to read the rest of the chapter, verses 19 to 22 reveals that David, the psalmist, is writing this Psalms because David is facing challenges. "If only you, God, would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies." To me, it seems as though David wrote this Psalms as a reminder that despite the challenges David was facing, the counter-narratives that were chipping away at David's faith, God is always with David. I'm sure everyone here can recount a memory of when we have faced extreme challenges. For me personally, just this year alone, I have faced obstacles that were aimed to break down my very being. In these painful situations, it was the reassurance that there were people who knew me better than I knew myself, who validated my existence, and who loved me unconditionally, that have reminded me over and over that I would overcome these challenges. I believe that in the Psalms, David is doing just this. In David's darkest moments, David is calling out for help, praying and singing, reminding himself that out there is someone who believes in him, even when David doesn't believe in himself. David writes as a reminder of God's love, which would help overcome these challenges. David remembers God's beautiful creation, David's own being, and how each detail was intentional. You knit me together in my mother's wombs. David's comfort comes from knowing that his God was the one who had created him, therefore knows everything about David. Since God created David, God will protect David because God is not going anywhere. While it is comforting to reassure oneself of the omnipresence of God, if I'm being honest, I get a little creeped out and scared when I really think about the idea of someone knowing everything about me. While this may be due to my Capricorn tendencies, I'm not sure if I want God to know what I do outside of church. As someone who has a lot of questions about my own faith and relationship to the divine, who is currently struggling with religion due to the noise that comes with the theologies created by oppressive heteronormative Christians, all things I pursue at Divinity School. Reading passages like Psalm 139 makes me wonder if I truly understand this omnipresent God. Therefore, I want to move away from the larger narrative that is happening within this chapter and focus on verse 14, because it has been my sense of hope and confidence this year. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I believe that in this very verse, the psalmist is sharing an instance of someone who is coming to understand their being and coming in terms with their identity all on their own. While it is true that this person is creating this identity through the eyes of their creator, it is important that the psalmist was the one who declares this identity, that they were the ones creating this identity for themselves. Notice the I in this statement. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. David makes a self-declaration. Due to this powerful message of self-declaration over one's life and identity, it is no surprise that this verse has been cited endlessly throughout the LGBTQ+ community. We have used this verse as a declaration that we will not be ashamed of our identities, creating counter-narratives for the heteronormal ethics created by institutionalized Christian structures. But the sad reality is that due to the malleability of biblical hermeneutics, this verse has also been used by pro-life activists and transphobic Christians to further their campaigns. Here is the perfect example of the noise and challenges that comes from being a part of Christianity. One verse can be interpreted completely differently, creating endless debates over what is right or wrong, or as queer theologian Timothy Koch calls, the biblical pissing contest. When I was a college student and was still coming in terms with my sexuality, I have read hundreds of what the Bible really says about homosexuality texts to understand all sides of the debates when it came to interpretation. But I agree with Timothy Koch when he demands that his readers have the agency over their interpretations of the Bible. Koch asks his readers to start cruising the scriptures. He's borrowing the term cruising from gay sexual practices to reveal the power queer folks have when finding truth in our readings of our Bible. As Koch states, I seek to allow my own deep knowing, my own homoerotic power, to be the light by which I do my reading, thinking, and believing. Here, Koch declares that his own identity as a gay man is what will help him decide his own truth. This goes back to Psalms 139:14, that despite the noises, both the psalmist and Koch is revealing the power of declaring our own identities. They both remind us that it is in our power to declare our being however we want because it is divinely ordained. It says so in the Bible. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I know that these days it's hard for us to believe this message. As mentioned earlier, this verse has been playing over and over in my mind since the beginning of 2020. I think it is because this year has already been proven to be one of the most challenging years of my life. For me personally, being at the Divinity School, where I'm surrounded by people who may not validate my existence and believe that I am unworthy of God's love, it is hard to believe in my own self-worth. But why I believe the divine constantly reminds me of this verse is that it serves as hope for people like you and me. Like Lizzo states during her performance, many of us live in a world that does not love us back, that does not accept us because we are queer or trans or Asian or black, low income, homeless, immigrants, whatever. But that is why I majored in queer theory and came to the Divinity School, why I decided that I had to preach my truth, because despite what the world was labeling me or telling me who I should be, I decided to create my own identities and declare it for myself. I am gay despite the heteronormative teachings I grew up with, and despite the homophobic comments I hear in my daily life. Psalms 139:14 reminds us that it was God that created us, and God done it damn well.